Dinner Bus, The Journey Onward by Master Atlan, Chapter 48, and the greatest food fight of the ages. And so Sasuke came to us one day on his knees and begged us. He was like, "Oh, please, help me upgrade my weapon, because the grenade launcher is so cool and I want to be just like you." So after a while, we finally took pity on him and I said, "Silence, knave, let me guide you in ways of making your weapons even cooler than before." So with my trusty followers, we traveled the city, found ourselves the best upgrades imaginable, and now thanks to me, he has been blessed with more awesome power than ever before. The orange-haired girl exclaimed, completing her tale. Slowly, all eyes shifted from the bombastic storyteller to the more trustworthy narrator beside her. Sasuke mentioned he'd like to upgrade his weapon, and we helped. Ren softly spoke as Nora plopped down in her seat next to him. That's it. They looked at the Chica for confirmation as he silently nodded in agreement. Yang stretched out her arms. "Well, you have to give it to her. She's one hell of a storyteller." "Thank you." Yang gave the ginger bruiser a thumbs up in solidarity and quickly had to lean back to catch the strawberry tossed to her. She caught it between her teeth, and the two girls quickly started making a game of it. "You got an upgrade?" Sasuke leaned over to spot his teammate and grinned with excitement as his ears twitched on his head. "That's awesome. We should have a match to test it out. You got some upgrade too, and I need to break them in. It's not much, really," as Sasuke shrugged. "It's just supposed to make my shots reach farther." "How dare you!" Nora cried out indignantly while still tossing a berry for Yang to catch. It's a patented Nora super upgrade. That means it takes whatever you had before and makes it 10 times better, guaranteed." "I hardly doubt that's a guarantee. I hardly doubt your face." John coughed. So, noticing a distinct lack of Ruby drooling and asking these guys what's new about the weapons, any reason she's not here. The group of friends noticed the absence of their little hooded friend from the table. In fact, none of the people outside of her team had seen her since returning. "Ruby's," Yang stopped and caught a grape before continuing. "She's back in her room doing something. She said that today was the last day to enjoy ourselves, and we had to make it special. Then she just started muttering to herself before she ran off to lock herself in our rooms." Wai shook her head. "That girl is too much worry to bother with after coming back from break." Did your break not go as planned, Weiss?" It was fine." The Harris answered Pierre's question with a small, content smile. "I stayed in a villa my family owns in Beitel, enjoyed some fine cuisine, took in the culture, reorganized myself for another semester of Ruby's antics, and just generally being around this group, and I stayed away from my father's business talk and Whitley's pestering." "Who's Whitley?" "Someone none of you will ever meet, so forget that name entirely." "Definitely gonna remember that." Wise glared at Yang's smirk. The blonde chuckled before turning to her silent partner. "What about you, Blakey? Have a cozy vacation away from the absolute fun and joy that is your team?" "Blake?" The cat fauness hadn't been listening to her friend's conversation. Her attention was preoccupied with the pages of her journal. She silently looked over the facts and details she had recorded over the last few days. Near the end of the break, Blake had realized that she hadn't stopped thinking about the White Fangs and Torchwick's role in helping them. It had become so prevalent that her mind was becoming bogged down with theories and trying to remember facts. She needed to write them down just to get them out of her head. So she had bought an empty journal and started writing any sightings or facts or ideas she had down. Her official log of everything White Fang or criminal related. A lot of people would be concerned to hear she had made this, but she had a good reason, and she was reminded of it when she turned the page. A sketch of her former partner, his back. A sight that she had become very familiar with following him on missions over the years. There was a plan for meeting their ranks, a plan that meant the help of someone like Roman Torchwick and his goons was a necessity. Whatever goal was so important that the heads and leaders of the White Fang would work with not only a human, but a criminal like him was not one Blake wanted to see fulfilled. Danzo, Adam, they decided to work with him, and they were dragging Naruto's mother, Kushina, into it as well. She couldn't let them succeed in whatever they were planning. Blake was finally pulled from her thoughts as Yang leaned into her line of sight. The fauness shirked back in surprise before Yang smiled with a tilt of her head. "What's up? Just be nice. Must be nice up there in the clouds." "Sorry," Blake apologized, discreetly closing her book to avoid any questions. "I was just going over some things from last semester." "Wow," Yang drawled. "That sounds so super interesting." "You're the one that asked them." Fair. Yang quickly turned away and caught a cherry in her mouth as she nodded to Nora, who was clapping and giggling happily at her successful catch. Oh yes, the ginger powerhouse had wanted to try that with her as well during their 2-week reprieve. Luckily, Blake had fended her off as best she could, despite her protests and many tantrums that were quickly solved with Ren's help. And thank God, Nora's kindred spirits were back. So, Kiba clapped his hands. As fun as it is to sit around reminiscing and watching Nora sing bits of food across the table, any plans for today? A massive white folder was slammed down on the table hard enough to shake it. All the students stared at it in shock before looking up at the young girl that had dropped it between them with a look of pride and overwhelming excitement. She didn't even seem worried that she had crossed out the words property of Waishni in favor of printing best day ever. Friends, partners, sisters, and wives. Hey, 7 minutes ago, I had a dream. You're old. I dream that one day we would come together, find the most fun activities we can, and have the most fun anyone has ever had in the history of ever in the whole world. They watched the groaning silence as White silently flipped through the folder. She closed it with an indifferent expression. You owe me a new folder. I don't know if I can afford it. You'll find a way. What are you talking about? Blake asked. I'm talking about enjoying our last day before school starts again. Let's have fun and start the semester off with a bang. I say we start off with the Yang. Yang joined in with a cheer before looking around at the pained, uncomfortable expressions on their faces. She waited for the agreement. She just received a bear harshly spiked into her nose. We have a really busy semester ahead of us now, Ruby clarified as she started counting off her fingers. The new students are filling up the campus. The tournament is going to happen right after our first mission, and another few months of listening to Professor Port's lectures that earned an audible groan from them. Plus, don't forget that new training seminar from some porting cast that starts next week. You okay? Tenten looked worried when she saw her leader gag and choke on his drink, locking his hands in his chest as his face suddenly went purple for some reason. I thought that was optional. Yeah, but I already signed us all up for it. Her teammates looked up at her accusingly. What? I thought you'd be happy to get some extra credit. Not when there's no extra credit to get them. No point crying over spilled milk. Ruby shrugged and continued on, ignoring the short and angry tirade Weiss devolved into. I just want us all to have fun before we start classes again. Plus, we always have so much fun hanging out. I think you might be remembering things differently. There's a distinct amount of shit hitting our fan when we're all together. And that invite for everyone. Ruby nodded as Naruto grinned and stood up. Then count me in. I could use the excitement. Yeah, Ruby was quick to high five him for agreeing with her. Come on, let's do it. You go ahead. Blake spoke as her leader looked betrayed by her answer. The Phonics looked back at her journal, remembering its contents even as something ridiculous as her partner throwing food at Nora occurred at her side. There was no point in her going with them if this was going to be where her thoughts were the whole time. I think I'll sit this one out. Come on, there's nothing wrong with a little fun before we start getting back to work. Of all people, it was wise to come to the defense of Ruby's suggestion. The hooded girl looked at her partner with admiration as Weiss stood up. I don't appreciate her stealing my folder, but I can appreciate the effort she put into her planning. And it's not a bad idea to partake in an activity together as a team and with friends. I believe him. Weiss' heartwarming speech was interrupted as a cream pipe splattered across her face. The entire cafeteria went silent after the impact. It was dead still, the only sound being the whipped cream dripping down on the floor before the pan followed. To Weiss's credit, she didn't freak out, scream, or stomp her feet demanding someone pay for her clean bill, but the fact she silently stood there was much more terrifying. She slowly reached up and wiped the cream off from her face, her blue eyes opening with an icy detached, almost murderous glint to them. She looked across the room. Whoever did that, speak up, and I promise I won't be mad. Hunting. So, then he tells us, don't die, and if that ain't an action movie line, I don't know what is, and then we start fighting off these white van guys, and we're in sync. It was crazy, and we were beating all these guys up and saving the day and everything. awesome. And then this big guy walked out, and I mean big, like sage big, but he's got Scarlet sitting on his shoulder, like that time during the parade they tell us not to remind them about it. Exactly. So she's off to fight that Torchwick guy, and leaves me and Naruto to fight this new dude, and we handle it. No big deal. I even left a cut on his face, but then he does this weird arm thing, and everything changes. I hit him in the head again, but no blood, not even the neck, like he didn't have aura. 1 sec, and now the dude had it to spare, and he punches me, and it hurts bad. How bad? I felt like picking a banana and I felt like picking up the banana and picking up that banana and apple I ate. That's bad. So then, if that wasn't bad enough, the thing on his arm covers his whole body, and now the dude was covered in aura, and things were getting steamy. Son looked at his partner, and I mean like steam was actually shooting off his body and everything, like a sauna. So I pulled out my semblance, started blowing off my clones, kicking ass. This big guy dives in to hit me, but Naruto pushes me out of the way and takes the hit. Whoa, gotta make sure to thank this guy for saving your ass. Let's not get crazy. Son defended before shocking. Anyway, Blake's leader shows up and brings this other weird girl with her, but this girl's got blades and lasers and everything, and if that wasn't weird enough, Naruto pops back out and he's covered in aura too. He screams and stretches his arm and beats up the huge guy, and it turns out they're both descendants of this ancient clan, the Faunus, that used to fight Grimm a real long time ago. Are we still sure we want to participate in the tournament with these guys? Don't be a baby. Anyway, we save the day. I'll go home safely, and then they go out on break. The son smirked, which means I had 2 whole weeks to get to know Blake better. Awesome, dude. The blue-haired boy bumped his partner's fist, then when the chance was offered, and smiled. So, how'd that go? Not great. The faun's shoulders sagged, and even his tails fell behind him sadly. Turns out she's way quieter than I thought, and it doesn't say much. I mean, we talked a few times, but I usually got stuck dealing with this hyper short girl, or the sword guy whose hands were healing. I mean, they were cool, but she seems kind of preoccupied. Oh, dude, his partner raised his fist. I request a return. You return that fist bump. No way. Things are weird right now, but I refuse to give up. Blake is one of the cutest girls I have ever met, and the people here are just as awesome. I gotta keep trying. The son squared his shoulders confidently and nodded his head, ready for the challenge that may come in the next semester. His smirk fell before looking at his partner accusingly. You can't tell anybody about the stuff I told you about, okay? That's super secret. You have my word. I mean it. Don't just sneak off and tell Scarlet because Scarlet can't keep a secret to save his life, and loose lips sink ships, and sink ships cause the people in them to drown slowly and painfully. I got it. His partner cowered and shook his boots before taking a deep breath. You didn't have to go into detail. I already know how awful the water is. I know you do, buddy. Sam patted his partner's shoulder and continued down the pathway by the cafeteria. If his guess was right, Blake and her friends would all be together eating right now. And this was his chance to get closer with them all and become a member of the pack. He was so caught up in his thoughts that neither him nor Neptune noticed through the window the panic, splattered food, and the occasional thrown John. Okay, they should be eating, so I'm gonna introduce you to them, Son warned. Please, don't make me look bad. I'm insulted you would even think that. And don't hit on any of them, okay? There are a lot of girls, and they're all cute, and, he sighed, just be cool, okay? Dude, he stopped and grinned, showing his sparkly whites to his partner. The tall young man had a head of bright blue hair, pulled back with yellow goggles, a red jacket with a dress shirt, and tied beneath it, complete with jeans and black shoes. Neptune and Vasilis, coolest guy at Haven, Son conceded. Good point. And they continued to the cafeteria entrance as Neptune asked, Hey, did you ever find those guys you were looking for? You seemed really excited to meet them back at Haven. Dude, don't remind me, Son groaned. It turns out that the dozen of Beacon are just some group the students made up before the festival started and try to psych us out. It sucks to hear that. I know. Son reached for the door, but they burst open in front of him. Run! They're at it again. It's the dirty dozen. Son and Neptune shared a look. look at the huge grin falling to hide itself on Sun's face. They barely pushed through the onslaught of oncoming students before breaking into the cafeteria. Hunting! The short, usually peppy girl cackled maniacally on the top of her heap of tables and kitchen equipment. Fools! Pledge your allegiance to the Pancake Empire, and I shall be kind in my treatment. You can join my fool and entertain me. Nora, I'm totally fine not being the king or queen or emperor or whatever, but do I have to be the fool? John pleaded. I mean, can't I be like a knight or something? Silence, fool! John shrunk under her booming voice and whimpered. His partner was quick to pat his shoulder and comfort him as Rain hung his head. We shouldn't have given her this much power. Hindsight, I suppose. Another laugh echoed across the room, coming from a softer voice trying to sound as boisterous as Nora's. Standing atop a pile of chairs was Ruby with her hood flapping behind her dramatically. She stepped up at the highest point, nearly slipping and trying to keep herself balanced before announcing, "No chance, Pancake Dumbire," Nora grumbled as the young huntress proclaimed, "For you shall fall to the Cookie Kingdom." Okay, I have a few things to address before we proceed with this fight. Weiss and the rest of her team joined her partner on top of the heap as the Harris critiqued. I'm just going to skip over the structural integrity and shoddy craftsmanship of the pile. I'm noticing a pattern with you in stacking things that shouldn't be stacked, and I'll just ask that we change the name, if not into something more elegant that at least grammatically correct. But Weiss Cookie Kingdom is so much better. Ruby countered. It has the thing you should like. Alliteration. Ruby beamed a smile and nodded. Yes, we'll prepare yourself for the shock, but that's not enough to make me comfortable with the name. Her expression fell as Weiss crossed her arms. You could just name them properly. Alliteration doesn't mean you have to spell them the same. Well, thanks for the tip, Weiss, but let's get back to the important stuff. Yang climbed up to stand up beside her team as Blake followed up as well. The best way to enjoy our last day before the start of the semester, food fight to end all food fights. This spiraled out of control much faster than I expected, Blake mentioned as she looked back to the little nook she hid her journal in. Hopefully it would be safe in there from whatever happened next. Blake wasn't going to say she knew exactly how this would turn out, but she knew exactly how this would turn out. The fondness took some hair behind her ear. This will be messy. Sitting in the third corner of the cafeteria was a structure of food trays and silverware. On top of the man-made monstrosity was Kiba, bellowing at the top of his lungs with arms crossed confidently. The three boys smirked. Doesn't matter whether you've got kingdoms or empires, all shall fall before the might of four kick-ass. We accept all unconditional surrenders and pleas for mercy on workdays from 9 to 5. Kiba, no. Naruto clambered up and poked his head up from behind the fort. His ears stood up on his head, and he glared at his partner. We were gonna name it a United Knight Army under my. As I said, Fort Kick-Ass is accepting all surrenders before we begin. Any takers? Never! Ruby yelled as her team roared and raised their fists in solidarity. Fools! Nora laughed. Now you shall fall. Now you shall forever work in the pancake mines in service of your queen. I thought we were an empire. Ren questioned. Empires don't have queens. Silence! Naruto finally crawled up to the top level and stood beside Kiba. The two partners looked between each other and smirked before the brunette shrugged. Okay, don't say we didn't warn you. And they jumped off the fort as its walls burst out in every direction. Tenten and Sasuke barreled through their structure and sent in trays flying. Team Ruby panicked and ducked behind the wall as trays pelleted their construct relentlessly. The tower fared better. Team Juniper hiding behind the tables to avoid the savage onslaught of silver projectiles. Team Noctix stood in the center of the surprise attack as the leader and his partner landed back on the ground. They stood beside their teammates before grabbing their weapons for their battle. The team stood tall with their temporary arms before yelling at the top of their lungs and charging their foes. They're coming! Ruby yelled, to battle! Yeah! Now! For the melons! Noctix and Ruby paused as they looked up at the shadows rocketing towards them. The colorful team Juniper all moved as quickly as they could to grab and throw watermelons. They set them on tables across the floor, on trays, and in the air before tossing them out like a ballista to spike into their foes. The others had to quickly dodge and weave through the storm of watermelons as they avoided the red splatters and flying seeds that erupted from the impact. Okay, looks like we can actually start. Yang called out with glee as she charged across the cafeteria, picking up a pair of chickens along the way to secure around her fist as makeshift gauntlets. Here comes the one-way Shaolong Express. Careful, melons are returning fire. I repeat, melons are returning fire. Yang grinned while making a mad dash for the tower, her hands blurred out at some point to destroy any wayward watermelons coming at her. Her devious grin and focused glare landed on the blonde leader that was about to toss another fruit at her before noticing her course aimed towards him. She grinned when she saw John sweating realization. No offense to the goofball, but you always aimed for the weakest link first. This was food war, and food war never changes. Yang was coming up on John, and the boy flinched in fright. She noticed him gulp down the lump in his throat before stepping back and leaping up. She expected he was trying to retreat, but Yang was shocked to see Ren dive through the space John had jumped from and dashed towards her. Her eyes widened, and she quickly leaped through the air as he slashed at her legs with a pair of leeks. The buxom boxer landed back on the ground and fell into her stance as Ren kicked back up his feet with his leeks in hand. She smirked, raising her chicken fist as the martial artist narrowed his eyes. They ran at each other, and Yang yelled as she leapt over and slammed down with a paltry punch. Ren attempted to block her heavy strike, but realized it was futile while his legs started to buckle from the pressure. He slid in under her side as Yang pushed her through and caught her balance. The two were quickly on each other, the chicken meeting leak in a blur as they attempted to catch each other in their blind spots. Yang ducked beneath Ren's wing and quickly raised her arms to block the follow-up after he had spun through again. Yang continued to block against the boy's quick swings before lunging down and swiping at his ribs. Ren stepped back, but Yang lurched forward. The blonde threw punch after punch as the boy tried to block them, but to worse result each time. His whole body jerked side to side as he tried to cope with the power behind her strikes. But Yang was relentless, grinning a little wider before the leaks finally snapped and her chicken gloves slammed into his chest. He was almost blown back before she reached out and grabbed his foot. She pulled him back in before spinning around and sending him careening into a pile of chairs and trays. She pumped her fist, knowing she had to take one enemy out. Ren had the moves and skills, but so did she, and she hit hard, really hard. Speaking of getting hit hard, that's what happened to the back of her head as she was suddenly smacked through several tables. The boisterous Tina had to catch herself and shift back into stance before she saw Pyrrha standing with a stale baguette in one hand and a tray gripped like a shield in the other. Yang bounced on her feet, the sound of the others getting into battle across the hall reaching her ears before she sprinted towards the redhead. The moment she threw out a jab, Pyrrha ducked behind it and slammed the baguette into Yang's stomach with a resounding thud. The blonde nearly doubled over as Pyrrha followed through and came up behind her. Yang turned and yelled, throwing out a cross as Pyrrha swung her weapon along her arm to strike her in the chin. Yang's head shot back and made her stumble before Pyrrha spun and slammed her tray into the blonde's chest. Yang let out a sharp gasp as she was sent flying across the cafeteria. Ruby leapt over her sister's flying form and came back down, screaming at the top of her lungs as she swung her tray down swiftly. Naruto saw her incoming and called for his team to move as they dispersed. Ruby landing with a powerful stomp on the table before turning around to see Noctis gathering together. She called for support. Weiss and Blake quick to join her side. You two, go! Tendon and Sasuke nodded and charged in the opposite directions. Naruto and Kiba were facing the trio, Naruto gripping up a breadstick while the tattooed boy held a pair of chicken wings. For glory, Ruby declared, Blake and Weiss joining in with her triumphant roar as the hooded girl jumped down from the table. She charged the two boys, a tray raised in hand like a blade. Yeah! The two stepped aside at the last moment to let her pass. Kiba snatched her hood as the young girl snapped off her feet, gagging before slipping back to the ground. He smirked before lifting her up and tossing her back towards her team. The young leader let out a terrified scream as Blake and Weiss stepped aside to let her sail between them. Blake brandishing a pair of baguettes while Weiss pulled out a swordfish and took her fencing stance. The Schneeharris made a powerful lunge and went flying at the two boys. As Kiba raised his wings to block her attack, she followed through and pushed him back. As Naruto turned in time to block Blake's strike, the two Faunis started exchanging strikes and swings, their bread weapons colliding and sending the flakes off in every direction. Blake swiping her baguette at the fox as quickly as she could, chambering her unused hand before following through with it. She forced the speedy blonde to block and retreat as she pressed forward. He leaned his head back to avoid a swipe to the chin before pulling his whole body back as she swung down at his chest. He ducked beneath her last slash and then forced her to block as he started attacking. Even with the shorter reach, Naruto made up with it with faster strikes before quickly retreating out of her range. Blake yelled and brought her baguette down as Naruto dodged to the side. He leapt up onto a table before kicking her in the head. Blake using her shadow to take the hit as she somersaulted with the attack. She jumped up on the table with him, and the two Faunis were back to exchanging blows. Kiba tried to block the stab as the table of the swordfish pierced through the chicken wings. Kiba quickly jerked to the side with Weiss's weapon still pierced through his and forced the hairs out of her stance. He quickly sent out a kick, but Weiss deftly avoided by backflipping away from it. The ivory-haired girl then forced her footing and dashed back at Kiba. He yelled and threw a strong cross at her approaching form, but she quickly ducked under it and pulled the fish nester out of his chicken fang. She slid to a stop and returned to her battle stance as Kiba took his. Even if he was larger and stronger, Weiss had no trouble leaving him in the dust. Yeah! Weiss proclaimed and lunged at the wild-looking boy. She left a quick strike and flipped over him before he could counter. She dove back in to strike his backside before she was surprised by how quickly he reacted to block her strike. Kiba caught her swordfish under his armpit and locked her in place before she could pull back. With Weiss now in his range, he started sending jabs for her head. Varys was forced to weave around the chicken wing strikes as she took hold of her swordfish with both hands. Once Kiba's arms was fully stretched out, Weiss yelled and finally pulled the swordfish from out of his grasp and stepped out of his range. The brunette smirked as he raised his fist again while Weiss laid her right foot back. She felt something knock against her shoe and looked down to see a ketchup bottle of lion by her foot. Oh, that could work. Blake yelped when the breadstick Naruto was using came swinging at her with a link of sausage tied to one end. One of her baguettes broke and she was forced to dodge as his weapon came swinging for her head. He laughed and smiled as she was forced on the defensive, and she quickly had to stifle the small smile growing in her face while they played this ridiculous game. This was a good fight. This was a food fight, a slightly entertaining food fight, and nothing else. Say your Naruto let a yelp as a carton of milk burst against the back of his head and sent him stumbling. Milk matted his ears and back in the back of his head as he looked back for a moment. What the? Blake took her chance and dashed in. She grabbed a link of the sausage and ripped it, taking most of Naruto's weapon away from him. She quickly whipped it around and grabbed it around his ankle before yanking his leg out from under him. The blonde couldn't even yell before Blake spun and sent him flying with a kick. Kiba was about to engage the hairs again before he heard his partner's scream grew louder. He turned around just in time as Naruto landed in his arms. The duo made to argue, but Weiss grabbed the bottle of ketchup and slammed it onto the ground, cutting the floor in a red sheen that caused Kiba to lose his balance. Hey, no fair! Here! Ruby came flying through the air and slammed into the incapacitated partners with their slippery foothold and defenses. Kiba and Naruto were sent flying through the air and into a pile of tables. Ruby cheered, "See, for glory!" Tenten and Sasuke charged the tower as the remainder of Juniper threw watermelons to intercept them. The bunny-haired girl held her weapons between her fingers, an assortment of little chocolates, rolls, and chicken nuggets. She threw them with all her might at the top of the tower, forcing Nor to duck. Unfortunately, John was too slow to react and took a breadstick tree straight to the face. He screamed, and the resounding thuds while he tumbled down the tower caused everyone to flinch in pain. Pyrrha turned back just in time to raise her tray as Sasuke tried to attack her. His kick met her tray and let out a mighty boom. She pushed him off, and he used the opportunity to launch himself away from her. The champion made to follow, but had to raise her tray when Tenten threw a slew of delectable projectiles at her. Pyrrha knocked them all away before swiftly turning the baguette in her hand and throwing it like a javelin. Tenten raised her guard but was still knocked away, knocked off her feet by the force behind her throw. Piro watched her friend get blown away as she held up her tray. She felt someone step up behind her and noticed Ren had picked himself up to fight again. He caught his bearings he caught his bearings and they charged on the offensive. Sasuke saw them coming. Kitchenware flew up in every direction as Naruto, Yang, and Kiba burst out of the piles that they were buried under. Yang roaring and sprinting to join the fight as the rest of her team followed her lead. Naruto and Kiba grabbed some plates and silverware off the floor as they charged in to join the fight. The center of the cafeteria became an unstoppable war zone from which no one could leave without getting covered in food. John groaned as he pulled himself up. He rubbed his head, running a hand over the scar on his forehead before taking notice of the battlefield happening just a few meters away. The resilient blonde thought to join his teammates, but when a stray apple came flying over hard enough to burst on impact next to his head, he decided against it. This might be getting too crazy. I agree, Knave. Nora came dropping down beside him, wielding a long metal pole with a watermelon pierced on the end of it. The orange-haired powerhouse looked back at John and gave him a sad smile. Now I must be off. What kind of ruler would I be if I just set my subordinates off to be brutally murdered for the glory of my rule? A regular one, perhaps, but I want to play in the game too. John palmed his face at his friend's antics as she silently wept. Knave, if I do not make it back, I leave you in charge of picking up the droppings. Really, even now. Farewell. Nora turned her weepy, vulnerable, expression instantly changing into one of vicious, combative desire as her hands tightened around her makeshift hammer. Her grin widened as she pounced. The group of friends had resorted to their reflexes and instincts while exchanging blows in a tight area, but they heard Nora coming and looked up in time to see the ginger reel her hammer back while falling. Someone called for cover, and they all immediately separated as she brought it down with enough force to blow everything around it away. Nora was quick to pull her weapon back and spin it around her to force her opponents away. She came to a sudden stop and thrust her weapon into the closest person she could. Unfortunately, Tenten was that person. The older girl was thrown off her feet with immense force and sent flying back. Blake was caught off guard as Tenten came flying into her, and they both went careening to the back of the cafeteria. Nora's eyes glinted as she spotted her next target. The fox's ears shot up in horror before he jumped up to avoid the swing to his legs. Nora persisted and swung her hammer as Naruto struggled to keep up out of her range. She made to attack again, and Naruto smirked while raising his fist in preparation. A duck. He immediately went over as Kiba vaulted over his back to catch the ginger by surprise. His kick landed on the pole of her hammer, and she pushed him back. Nora dodged under his punch before slamming the end of the pole into his gut and then bringing the watermelon end down on Kiba's head. Yang smirked and charged Nora as she raised her hammer up again with her chicken gloves on. She started actually forcing the debilitative powerhouse on the defensive to dodge her precious punches. Adding a few kicks into the mix, Yang was sure she had to jump the run, so she didn't see it coming when Nora slammed the hammer into her side and sent her flying, breaking through the cafeteria window and out into the campus. Ruby watched her sister get tossed aside like a ragdoll by the orange menace. The sheer carnage and pandemonium going on around her, the flying bodies and terrifying screams, the sound of Rice trying to reprimand them for getting something in her hair before Naruto accidentally tripped her over. Enough was enough. Nora and the rest of Juniper were taking advantage of their moment of triumph and pushing forward, but they were blown back as a red bullet came barreling through them. The teens landed bodily over the cafeteria floor as the red blur came to a stop. Her hood flapped behind her before she moved in another burst of speed. With the help of her semblance to propel her forward, Ruby knocked everyone off their feet before they could get back up. She dashed around and blew everyone away, so they were rendered helpless. Ruby continued doing this and prepared for the coup de grace, but felt someone run into her. She slid to a stop and looked up in shock. Sasuke stopped as well and looked up at her with dark red eyes. The Uchiha had copied her semblance and prepared to run. Ruby took challenge head on. The red and purple blurs pass by each other before turning around and clashing again. They continue to meeting head on around the entire cafeteria before running around the walls of the hall. They got closer and closer until Ruby and Sasuke were circling each other at blinding speeds in the center of the cafeteria. The wind started to pick up wildly as trays and stray pieces of food and trays starting to shake and get lifted up by the force of the wind, followed by the friends suddenly getting pulled into the powerful vortex being created between the two speedsters. Everyone started screaming and flailing to the air as they were sucked into the tornado of cafeteria tables and kitchenware. See, you see, Sun gleefully cheered over the winds as he held onto a pillar for dear life. I love this school. Neptune wasn't listening as he held onto another pillar, covered in foodstuff and with a fork sticking out of the goggle lens on his head. The doors to the cafeteria blew open, and the boy spotted the blonde professor stomping into the fray. The deputy headmistress, frowned at the sight in front of her and fixed her glasses up her nose. And Glinda raised her riding crop over her head before bringing it back down. Ruby and Sasuke were lifted off the ground by her telekinesis and left floating in the air. The wind tornado created by their running quickly died out as everything fell to the floor. Friends and teammates included him. The stern blonde waved her riding crop in the air as everything started to float. As stains started bleeding off the walls as concrete sealed back together. Glass forced back into the windows and tables flew back into a perfect line with each other. After a moment, the once ruined cafeteria had been returned to pristine condition. Sun and Neptune slowly slid back to their feet as the three teams lifted themselves off the ground. They inspected themselves to see just how dirty they had gotten before they realized that they were under Glinda's scrutinizing glare. Children, she spoke tersely while they buckled under her stare. Can anyone please explain to me how this little food fight blew out of proportion so quickly? Anyone? Yeah! Yang burst through the doors and past Sun and Neptune as she cheered. Yang's here for round. Oops, bad timing. My bad. Glinda's riding crop whipped over her shoulder and froze the boxer before she could retreat. She pulled the blonde back over and let Yang slide into place beside her team before releasing the kinesis hold. Once all three teams were gathered, Glinda started to fume. Honestly, how could this happen again? The new semester hasn't even started yet, and all of you are already back to causing pandemonium. Yeah, Ruby shuffled and smiled. It means we're all ready for school to begin, right? Sorry, I don't even. Glinda paused when she felt someone grip her shoulder. She looked over and saw Ospen step up to her side before looking between all of them. You all seem to be in top form. Yes, sir. Better than ever, in fact. That's good to hear. You have no idea what might happen this semester, so be sure to stay on your toes. Ospen smiled before turning to walk out. You're all dismissed. The students all beamed with smiles as Glinda looked at the headmaster in shock. She made to follow him out of the cafeteria while the Beacon kids raised their fists in triumph. Sun spared his partner a look and chuckled before making his way over to join them. You guys made it out by the hairs on your tails. Sun, Naruto was the first to meet the monkey in half of him. Did you see our food fight? See it? We were lucky not to get sucked into it. Neptune angrily coughed behind him. Well, I did at least. Lucky you. So, when were you guys gonna tell me? Sun grinned. The truth about the Beacon Dirty Dozen? Oh God, I nearly forgot. Naruto snickered and held Sun's shoulder for support before turned to his friend. Guys, you have to hear about this rumor Sun heard back in Haven. Apparently there's this group of students at Beacon that caused tons of trouble, and a bunch of people at the other schools think that these guys are gonna cause problems at the tournament, and they have the stupidest name. Naruto, no, I'm serious. It's so bad. Naruto, they're called the Dirty Dozen of Beacon, and the look of embarrassment and shame came across their faces made him stop for a moment. 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, and he made. Naruto's shoulders and ears fell as a blank look of horror took his face. Oh God, the name is so bad. They all watched the whiskered boy become more dejected, and Sun waved his hands in front of Naruto's face for some reaction before shrugging. Well, we'll let that sink in for a sec. Anyway, guys, I want to introduce you guys to someone, my partner and one of the coolest guys I know. Neptune, Vasilius, Sons told me all about you guys. The blue-haired boy looked between all of them before his eyes settled on one person in particular, but not enough about each of you, which is just a shame. The Schneehairs realized he was addressing her and stood up a little taller in surprise. He smiled. Hi there, Snow Angel. It's nice to meet you. Oh, Weiss smiled and nodded back. Nice to meet you as well. And it's Weiss, actually. I'll remember that. Some of the others watched the interaction between the icy hairs and the blue-haired boy, and then some sent a rather tentative, nervous looks to their Uchiha companion to gauge their reaction. Sasuke watched them talk for a moment before walking ahead. He felt the mess that matted his hair. I'm going to go take a shower before this stuff seeps in. I'm pretty sure you all should do the same before it's too late. They all looked over themselves to see just how dirty they were before making their way back to their dorms. The Haven duo watched them leave as the monkey waved. Okay, see you, Blake. Talk to you later. Can't wait. Once they were all alone, the blonde slapped his partner's arm. Ow, why? I told you not to hit on any of them, and what do you do right off the bat? That, I can't help it, man. She was just standing there, and my natural curiosity drew me towards her. Well, how am I ever gonna get to talk to Blake if you act all creepy to her teammates? I remember what you told me, man. I'm pretty sure I'm not the creepy one here. And the conversation quickly developed to slap attacks and grabbing each other before begging for mercy. Hunting, good witch was this close to putting us into detention for the rest of our lives. Weiss complained. Can we get through one of the new semesters before we wreck the whole school? The other school ridiculous for being troublemakers. You say that, but wasn't it you that started the food fight after being laughed? After someone laughed, Yang quickly raised her hands before the hairs could bite her head off. Well, whatever. Naruto shrugged as he arrived at Nox's door and opened it. And guess we'll just have to see how things play out before we wreak havoc again. Naruto, hold on. I forgot to tell you. The moment the blonde fox opened the door, a giant shadow enveloped him before he was squished under a large white mass. Kamaru, you're back! Ruby and Nora squealed as they quickly left their team and nuzzled into the big fluffy animal. The dog happily received their love and pants as he crushed the plum beneath his weight. Naruto's hands snaked around from beneath the white fur and desperately grabbed for something to pull himself out from beneath the dog's belly. This semester was shaping up to be exciting. Extra team dynamics. Hunting. Team Ruby sat in their room in silence while they each studied for the text tomorrow. Weiss slid her seat back and stretched out her arm before heading to the other table. I'm making a pot of coffee. Does anyone want one? Me. Yang hung over her head. Put all the cream and sugar you can fit in it, please. Me too. Ruby sat up. And Weiss, can you pour me a glass of milk? Excuse me, milk. Milk, and can I have some milk? I can't get you any milk, but I can pour you some milk. Weiss, that's what she asked. Yang clarified. Yeah, I just want some milk. Why are you saying it like that? Like what? Like you're in pain? You're in pain when you're saying milk? No, I'm not. Ruby pouted. I just want some milk. Weiss sighed. Say milkshake. Say milk. Maka. Oh my! Weiss, stop pestering her. Yang frowned. Now go over there and pour her some milk. Milk! Hey, Blake spoke up and got all their attention as she frowned. I'm trying to study here. Can you stop screaming about milk already? Did you just pour her the milk, Weiss? I just want some milk. You're not saying the same word. Weiss, calm down. Ruby finally jumped down from her bed and stepped up to her partner. Look, you're tired. You've been studying all day. You haven't been eating or drinking enough, and all you've had is coffee. Weiss was shaking and catching her breath as her shoulders started to lower. She nodded. Yes, I suppose you're right. I need some rest. Exactly. Now just get me some kiwis and milk, and we can all go to sleep. Weiss swarmed on her so fast Ruby couldn't react on time. Yang and Blake were quick to pull her off, but found themselves on the receiving end of the hair's vicious clawing hands. They decided from that point on to no longer prank the high-strung girl. End of chapter 48.